What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. BobbyFi coming back with an NBA show. I'm a little bit under the weather, so bear with me. I just wanted to get a quick show out and give you guys a little bit of an idea of how I'm attacking this slate. We've got a few interesting spots. I'm not going to go game by game on everything, but I'll give you a quick peek into my DraftKings and FanDuel lineups. I actually haven't built many FanDuel lineups yet, so probably to be just DraftKings for now. You can see, just real quickly, I think I will skim game by game for the NBA, just to express my level of interest in who. Let's just real quickly, this is a really interesting game to target, the Brooklyn-Washington game. The problem is when you try to figure out who you really want. For me, on the Brooklyn side, it's pretty basic. I really just want Levert and Jared Allen. In larger field tournaments, you can get some exposed to Rodion and Kurix. And any of these guys really like in large field. Garrett Temple might be a strong play. TLC, I don't know if he'll have as big a game as he did the other night, but might make some sense. But that was more in a blowout run situation. So this game, I think, should be competitive between the two worst teams, the two up and down teams. So I don't mind a little mini stack. You're giving away some leverage by not being able to play some of the games later. But I do think that there's some good spots. I really like Levert today to bounce back and have a monster game. I also like another guy in his price range, so it's a little tricky. On the Washington side, I'm not going to play Hachimura over here, and I'm really struggling with the Napier decision here. You can see I'm actually in this lineup I've got here as a mock-up lineup. I could probably get Napier in here. I actually could with exactly 300 more. It's not that I don't prefer him over Tice. I actually think Tice, I'm looking at the size of Portland in this matchup, and I think Cantor and Tice are both in play. I actually think Cantor's a really interesting off-the-board play, and I'll throw him into one tournament. Let me make a quick note before I don't forget to do that. But Tice is actually interesting because they both are going to have – one of them's going to have to play a bunch of minutes, and they both might have to play even together at some point today, depending on how Portland runs their lineups out. We saw some big lineups the other day. So it's interesting. I don't know. I know I sort of deviated from the original game, but I wanted just to mention the Tice versus Napier argument. Napier, I think if you're betting and stacking this game, I think you should be having some Napier. The problem is they keep rotating those minutes with the guards, and they can't leave him and Ish out there at the same time. So it's really who's ever got it going. He'll get the first crack at it, so you can make a good case for him. But anyway, Thomas Bryant, the preferred play. Murray's a little expensive over here, but probably gets there anyway or near there. Probably better play on FanDuel. Troy Brown is I think a very strong play. What's his name was going nuts the other day, the backup, Jerome Robinson. And it slowed down some of his minutes and some of his usage. So I think we're going to see a better Troy Brown today. I'm hoping people get off them a little bit from the other day's game. Jerome Robinson I'm not as interested in today, but Ish Smith obviously is in play. I don't know where I stand with him, but I do think he's kind of interesting. Bonga I thought was going to get more minutes the other night. I actually thought he was going to play like 30 minutes. He did look a little bit better for the most part, but not good enough to probably want to roster on a slate with a lot of good value. So let's move over to Portland and Boston. Damian Lillard, again, is going to be one of my favorite plays today. You're going to hear me say that in all the bubble games. Damian Lillard is going to be a priority play for me in all of them at whatever price. I think he's going to try and put him on his shoulder. The other day, CJ sort of put the team on his back and really was just on fire in the first half, and Dame was ice cold. CJ put up 50. Obviously, the game went into overtime, and Dame got there in overtime. He's going to have about 40 in end of regulation. I think we could look at 50-plus from Dame today. I'm not worried about the matchup with the Celtics, and I think this game is actually going to play pretty fast. So I actually quite like Dame. I don't mind taking a shot on McCollum where I'm not playing him or Nurkic, but not overly excited about it. I do think Zach Collins is still a phenomenal play at 3,400. 36 minutes he played the other day. We have him at 32 minutes today. Just at 3,400, it's really hard to resist that price from a guy who's pretty active. On the other side, not a whole lot of interest for me, but I do think Tatum is worth a shot. I think Jaylen Brown is a better play on FanDuel, but also worth a shot. And probably same for Gordon Hayward, but they're probably not going to get to most of these guys today. I do like the matchup for all of them, so getting one of those guys in some of your lineups might make some sense, but I wouldn't go any further than that. I mentioned Tice, being interested in him. And then Cantor, look, forget the recent, how much he's played last game or whatever like that. That was a team where you could see he wasn't going to play much. This is a spot against his old Portland team where you've got Nurkic, you've got Whiteside, you've got Collins. There's a lot of size out there, and you could actually play him and Tice together in certain times in this matchup. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Most likely they've used Tatum as the 4 mostly, but I do think you'll see a couple times where they might be on the court. And also I think that you just, Tice could get in foul trouble. These guys can get you in foul trouble, and Cantor can do some damage against these big boys. So I'm excited at the potential of Cantor as a long shot GPP play. Let's move over to San Antonio and Memphis. So one of the things I'm struggling with is the Derozan versus Levert argument today. And I really don't know what to say. I mean, if you want to go on recent history, and by the way, Derozan was spectacular down the stretch the other day. I think they're going to rely on him a lot. They don't have a lot of other options. Derozan, Cantor are two guys who I'm adding that I need to have more of in my pool. But those are definitely, it's just a hard one, man. It's hard for me to decide because I think Levert's upside is I think Levert's going to get over 50 today against that Washington team. And I think Derozan could. But I do think Derozan gets 40 more often where Levert might not. But then I look at the rest of the Brooklyn team and I'm going, where are they going to get the baskets from? So I'm sort of preferring Levert, but I could end up eating those words because Derozan's a strong play and certainly should be lower owned, although I haven't checked the recent ownership. Maybe people caught on to him after last week. White and Murray both make sense as GPP plays. I actually thought that Murray, from a real-life perspective, looked better than he did on his numbers, and he only played 21 minutes, and Derek White actually would look like the better player. I put up a monster game. So Derek White, I think, is definitely in play to do that again. You've got a great pace matchup for him against Memphis. So that's one of the things I'd be looking at. And then, as we get down, Lonnie Walker. Now, I will note that I do think if we have, which I think we will, Patty Mills back, it could kill some of Walker's minutes. So I wouldn't expect necessarily 32. But 26 even at 3,500 is still a very strong play. Good value, I feel like, just no matter what, and just has the upside to where you might even need him. Could put up 40 and you might really need him. So I actually like, not 40 real points, 40 fantasy, obviously. But so I sort of like him. I like Walker. I mean, he's going to be in a lot of my lineups, but I'm not going to make it. Nobody's a lock for me. Joe Val, great long shot GPP play. Not going to really get to him much. Obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a phenomenal play, and I love going right back to Brandon Clark as the guy that went to the other day for GPPs. Great way to go. Would like to get more exposure to this game, but again, Memphis sort of spreads it out. Dylan Brooks is, on a different slate maybe or something, maybe where this value wasn't here. But I don't think we need to go there. Maybe on FanDuel if he's cheap again. But Joe Val, realistically, makes, some sense. But I'm not in love with it. Ja would be the next guy after Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark for me. Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark are by far my two favorite plays on the Memphis side. All right, let's move on to a kind of a boring game, but some interesting price points. I really think that one of Fox, Heald, Bogdanovich is going to get there pretty big every non-bubble game. It's just the chances that these prices, that some of them are going to go off. Now, we've seen Fox he can put up 50 fantasy points, and he looked spectacular the other night against San Antonio. This is not as easy of a matchup against a slower-paced Orlando team, but I will say the over has now hit in Orlando. And what was it? I think it's every game since the All-Star break, going way, way back to, oh my God, February. So that is worth noting. Maybe they're playing a little bit faster now, and then in that case, Darren Fox should be a priority guy to look at. I really like Bogdanovich. Seems to be getting the minutes since he's got the starting role. Even before, you could see the 30 minutes. And look at his production, just really, really solid right there. And if he gets me 35 fantasy points today, I'm going to be happy with him. Also, a nice middling level player where it might be a little harder for other people to get him in or want to get him in. It seems very easy to go stars and scrubsy on this slate. Another guy we've got here is so Heald. I almost don't want to mention him because I'm sure people will say stuff about it, but he was 2 for 13 in 20 minutes. He was playing awful. I think we go back to the well and just give it a shot. If he gets hot, it's one of those things where he could put up 50 fantasy points. As could Bogdanovich. I feel the same way about all three of these guys. So I'm taking a little bit the savings right now, but I do think Fox is the most likely to have that real monster game, whereas Bogdanovich might crush his price by the most, and then Heald is the wild card. If he gets hot, you're going to want to have him. He's going to win you at GPP because he can put up a monster score. I don't see myself touching anyone else really on Sacramento. I was sort of looking around, and I get all the arguments for these other guys. I think I'll leave Rashawn Holmes for FanDuel if he's still cheap there, which I think he is. I actually think that you can make a case for Bjelica, but I don't think I'm going to do that today. I actually played him a little bit the other day. So basically it's mostly those guys. I'm trying to see. Harrison Barnes is always like a fine play at 5K because the minutes are just so secure. We might have to just throw him into a lineup because if you look at it, okay, so I prefer by a long shot, obviously, Bogdanovich. But if you think about it just from a minutes perspective and a safety, Barnes is safer but going to be less owned. So just thinking like that is kind of an interesting thing. Just gonna keep that one in mind. maybe keep it in my back pocket. I can always make a late swap if I need to. Although I do prefer the upside of Bogdanovich more than Barnes. Orlando side, not a lot of interest at these prices. I think everyone is fine. That's what I would say. If you want to take a shot on Vucevic and no ownership, fine. But I'm going to pay for other guys. If you want to take a shot on Aaron Gordon when he can pull out a miracle 50 at no ownership, that's fine. Evan Fournier doesn't have quite the same ceiling, but is going to get you probably 30 to 40 and not going to have any ownership again. So all these guys, just in play, just not anybody you want to focus on. This is the big game we got coming up. I really think people are off of something. They're missing something with Houston. If Houston plays in a tight game, it's going to take it's one of Westbrook or Harden or both, plus at least one or two other players are going to extremely exceed value based on pace of play, price, and the fact that the usage is going to have to go somewhere other than those two guys. And just in terms of rebounds and steals and being on the court, and nobody's a better example of this than Daniel House. Daniel House the other night puts up 34 fantasy points. Now, he did have a nice night shooting, 7 of 12, 6 made 6 threes, but he can do those other little things, 2 steals, 5 rebounds. Let's just say he only makes 3 threes in that game. Now, he's going to shoot a lot of them because they're going to be wide open. This is what's going to happen in every Rockets game. You're going to have a guy who's going to have a chance to shoot you into a winning lineup. So let's say he only makes 3. So you lose, he ends up with 26 fantasy points at 4K, now 4,400. I'm fine with it. I like getting exposure. This game is going to play fast. We have a great defensive team in Milwaukee, but they play fast. And Houston plays fast. And I think you want to look at – okay, so I'm just going to show something else real quick with a couple of my other lineups. So here's my balls out Houston lineup. And I really had to work to get the pricing in. I think it's interesting. You get to get House, Giannis, George Hill, Harden, and Westbrook. I wanted to try and get Covington in, but I can't afford him on this lineup. But anyway, I'm actually considering this because if you did this with Dallas the other night in the Dallas-Houston game, you win the money, man. It's tempting. And then you run it back with Giannis on the other side where, sure, even if he doesn't play that many minutes, he's going to put up 60 fantasy points in this matchup. I don't even know how he doesn't put up 65. It's going to be – Giannis is a tougher fade than most of the spend-ups today just because of the matchup. But we also have one great game. This is what makes these slates so interesting and so hard is that we really have to try and decide between some really good options that are rated out really similarly. So I mentioned my priorities in this game. It's the big ones, Westbrook, Harden, Giannis. The thing is, the one way you can sort of beat Milwaukee is outside shooting and mostly in the mid-range. And then you have Houston who doesn't take any mid-range shots, which is really weird. So it's going to be a strange pace. Also, it's hard to imagine this. I mean, I guess you could see Westbrook attacking. Brooks Lopez has been really good at defending the basket. So has this team. Make you want to lean Harden, but I just trust Westbrook in these games. I also really like Harden too. So I sort of like everybody in this one, I guess, is the long and short of it. But Westbrook, Harden, Giannis is the preferred ones. Obviously, Daniel House makes for a nice value. I like Robert Covington. The minutes are just so awesome. It's going to be hard not to at least want to get him into some lineups. PJ Tucker, I really like actually as a play. I think that there's a better chance of him fouling out of this game than not getting 38 minutes. He's going to put up 20-ish fantasy points. Now, if he makes a few shots, also he took 3 shots in the last game. He only had 4 rebounds in the last game. This guy could put up a double-double and all of a sudden get you 35, 40 fantasy points and sort of break the Podol chalk or Podol more chalk. And that's a combination people aren't going to have. So I'm going to try and get a little Podol and Tucker right back. It's just hard not to like those minutes. I know he's not the most productive player. He's actually a good real-life player. But I think you want to try and get exposure because Houston's playing a pretty tight, narrow rotation. Might even consider a different type of slate than McLemore just because he's going to get minutes. He got in foul trouble the other day. But I don't think you can do it in this situation. All right, on the Milwaukee side, it's pretty simple. It's Giannis followed by George Hill, then Middleton, then DiVincenzo. I got nothing else. But that's a pretty good bunch of guys to choose from. All right, let's move over to the last game, the Hammer, as they call it, Phoenix and Dallas. Okay, look, man, you got to make some choices tonight, some concessions. Do we want Harden, Giannis, or Doncic? The natural thing might be Doncic, but I actually think the best bet here is to try and get Porzingis into some lineups again. Just Doncic is always going to have some ownership, but he might have a little bit less tonight. But I do think, like, we got to look at these games Porzingis has been putting up, and it's been going on since before, too. You know, you can skip sort of the 2 bad shooting games, but look at this. Look at these numbers. This guy is looking like he's, like, right there, as good as Doncic most of the nights. Let's play him at the discount. Let's play him at no ownership. I think we just got to side with Porzingis a little bit until it hurts us. I just think he's a crusher. So I really like those two. Unfortunately, it's hard to get him in on this slate. On the Phoenix side, I really like Ayton and Booker, but I think they're both pricey, so I'm probably not going to get to them. No one's going to play Tim Hardaway Jr. and is probably a better than non-playable. Cam Johnson, I have some interest in. Sort of streaky, very young guy, big kid, got in some foul trouble the other day, but seems to have the minutes coming from him is starting. So I actually like him a little bit at 4,300. But, you know, again, I mentioned the other guys who I like better, so it's a little bit tricky. And again, you know, we've got on the Dallas side, I think it's just those two. I think that your argument for another play is Kleber because they're going to need some size, and we haven't seen Kleber against a team that doesn't have size since Dwight Powell left. We did see him play against Houston, who's a small team. He played 34 minutes in that game. Now, is the price great? No. Can the production get there at 34 minutes? Yes. But again, not overwhelmingly exciting with those guys. Just to give you a quick last scan, this is sort of what I've got for my basketball for the day. It's an outline. I'm going to make some changes. This is my early lineup for baseball. It's an outline. We're going to make some changes. Any questions, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on YouTube, hit me up anywhere you want. I'm happy to be doing this with you guys. We will have shows with Sheets coming up tomorrow on BetQL on QL TV, and it'll be another big day of sports. Hopefully baseball will still be around. All right, guys. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards later today. Good luck out there.